Carl Panzram, Killer, a journal of murder. Imagine confessing to 21 murders and over 1,000 rapes with the same energy most people use to describe their morning commute. No remorse, no justification, just rage. In Killer, a journal of murder, by Carl Panzram, you get the unfiltered autobiography of one of America's most brutal criminals, written in the 1930s while he waited on death row. Panzram wrote this in prison with a pencil smuggled to him by a guard. It was published posthumously. Pure, concentrated hatred in manuscript form. This is not a memoir. It is a confession with teeth. Panzram walks you through his life like he is giving directions to hell. He was born in 1891. He was brutalized in reform school. He decides the world deserves what it gets. He travels across America, then abroad, burning buildings, killing men, assaulting hundreds of people. He details murders in Angola where he hired 6 guides, took them into the wilderness, shot them one by one, and fed them to crocodiles. Back in the United States, he continues, he breaks into homes and commits arsons. The journal does not escalate because it starts at maximum brutality and stays there. No character arc, no redemption, just a man who hates humanity describing exactly what he did. Every page drips with contempt. He writes about violence the way food critics write about meals, detailed, specific, almost enthusiastic. He writes, I believe the whole human race should be exterminated. And he tried to do his part. This is not about understanding evil. It is about staring directly at it. Panzram offers no psychology, no childhood trauma defense, no insanity plea. Just the terrifying reality that some people genuinely hate existence itself and everyone in it. His last words before execution were, "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill 10 men while you were fooling around." The journal reads exactly like that. Urgent, violent, honest. Charles Manson, The Manson File. If a cult leader rambled about the Beatles, race wars, and cosmic consciousness while high on his own delusions, and someone wrote it all down, you would get this. The Manson File is a collection of Charles Manson's letters, interviews, and prison writings spanning decades after the Tate LaBianca murders made him America's most infamous cult leader. Manson wrote constantly, letters to lawyers, journalists, fans, enemies, rambling manifestos, song lyrics, prison interviews transcribed and compiled. This is not one coherent book. It is fragments of a fractured mind trying to maintain relevance from behind bars. There is no narrative structure because Manson's mind does not work that way. You get philosophy that sounds deep until you realize it is gibberish. He talks about Atiwa, air trees, water animals, his environmental philosophy. He claims the murders were not his fault. He did not kill anyone, he just reflected society back at itself. He blames the media, the government, his followers, everyone except himself. The letters jump between topics. One paragraph about saving the planet, next paragraph threatening the judge, then love poems, then apocalyptic rants about race war. He uses wordplay, makes up terms, circles back to the same obsessions, control, persecution, martyrdom. What makes it disturbing is not violence, it is watching someone gaslight reality itself. Manson rewrites history in real time, claims innocence while bragging about influence, denies responsibility while demanding recognition for his revolution. This is not about Manson's philosophy. It is about how narcissists construct alternate realities and force others to live in them. The writings show manipulation as a reflex, truth as a negotiable concept. Manson died still writing, still performing, still trying to control the narrative. The file proves you can be locked in a cage and still refuse to shut up. Kenneth Bianchi, The Hillside Strangler, A Murderer's Mind. What if a serial killer faked multiple personality disorders so convincingly that psychiatrists almost believed him? Then he wrote about it. Kenneth Bianchi's prison correspondence and interviews, compiled in The Hillside Strangler, A Murderer's Mind, document one half of the duo that terrorized Los Angeles from 1977 to 1978. Bianchi and his cousin Angelo Buono raped and murdered 10 young women, dumping bodies on hillsides. After his arrest, Bianchi claimed a personality named Steve did the killings. He underwent hypnosis. It almost worked. His writings blend confessions with psychological manipulation. The letters show a man constantly performing. Early ones protest innocence, wrong place, wrong time. Cousin framed him. Then psychological experts get involved. Bianchi discovers Steve, his violent alter ego. He writes detailed letters explaining dissociative identity disorder, citing medical journals like he is his own defense expert. Under scrutiny, the performance cracks. Experts catch him role-playing during hypnosis, studying psychology textbooks to fake symptoms. His letters shift again. Now he claims to be the victim of overzealous psychologists, of media bias, of his cousin's influence. Each version contradicts the last. Eventually, confession. But even then, he minimizes, justifies, and positions himself as the lesser evil. Angela was worse. I just went along. The murders were systematic. They lured women with police badges, tortured them, strangled them, and posed the bodies. Bianchi writes about this like he is describing someone else's crimes, with third-person emotional distance. This is not about split personalities. It is about how predators adapt their masks depending on the audience. Bianchi showed that manipulation is not just a criminal skill, it is a survival strategy. The genius of Bianchi's writings is they prove something terrifying. Some people have no authentic self, just performances stacked on performances, all the way down. Donald Pee Wee Gaskins, Final Truth. Imagine a man 5'5" claiming over 100 murders, describing them in such graphic detail that parts of his autobiography were banned, then casually calling them coastal kills versus serious murders like he is categorizing hobbies. Final Truth, the autobiography of a serial killer by Donald Gaskins, is one of the most disturbing true crime books ever published, and one of the most contested. It was published in 1992. Gaskins dictated it to journalist Wilton Earl, while on death row in South Carolina. He divided his murders into coastal kills and serious murders. Coastal kills were random torture murders for pleasure. Serious murders were contract kills. The book was banned in some regions, debated for accuracy, and undeniably horrifying. Gaskins walks the reader through a childhood of abuse, then uses it as a launching pad, not an excuse. He describes developing what he calls bothersome feelings, urges to torture and kill. His first victim was a hitchhiker in 1969. He did not stop for years. The coastal kills involved picking up hitchhikers along Highway 17 in South Carolina, taking them to isolated areas, torturing them for days, and killing them slowly. Men, women, children, Gaskins claims he did not discriminate. He describes dismemberment, disposal methods, and the sounds victims made. The tone is clinical, detailed, and proud. The serious murders were contract kills for money, including murdering a fellow inmate's son by planting a bomb disguised as a radio. He did this while on death row. That is the level of audacity. Throughout the book, Gaskins writes as if he is letting you in on secrets, with a conspiratorial tone. He says you do not understand what it is like to have that power. He frames murder as intimacy and control as love. The book does not escalate because it starts at maximum depravity and just stays there. This is not about understanding a serial killer. It is about recognizing that some people experience reality so differently that moral frameworks do not apply, and they know it, and they do not care. Gaskins was executed in 1991. Final Truth remains a document of someone who turned cruelty into craft and documented it like an instruction manual. O.J. Simpson, If I Did It. What if a celebrity wrote a book that theoretically confessed to a double murder called the account hypothetical, then had it ghostwritten with details only the killer would know? The book If I Did It, with the subtitle Confessions of the Killer after the Goldman family won publishing rights, is the most controversial not quite confession in American crime. It was published in 2007. It began as Simpson's attempt to make money with a hypothetical account of how he would have killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. After legal battles, the Goldman family won the rights, redesigned the cover to minimize the word if, and published it as what it is, a thinly veiled confession. The book splits into two parts. First, Simpson's account of his relationship with Nicole, jealousy, fights, the famous 911 call. He frames himself as a flawed but misunderstood husband. He blames the media, the police, everyone. Then the hypothetical chapter. He writes, "Here is how it would have happened if I did it." Simpson describes going to Nicole's condo with a friend named Charlie, who conveniently disappears from the narrative. A confrontation, a knife appears, a rage blackout. When awareness returns, there's blood everywhere. Nicole and Ron are dead, and a glove is missing. The details are specific, too specific. The layout of the scene, the timing, the emotional state. He writes in first-person present tense, not how I would've, but how I did. Then he catches himself and reverts to hypothetical language. The book reads like a confession with a legal disclaimer attached. This is not about Simpson's guilt or innocence. It is about how narcissism demands validation, even when silence would be safer. Simpson could not resist the spotlight, could not stop controlling his narrative, even when the narrative destroyed him. The Goldman family redesigned the cover so the word "if" is microscopic and "I did it" dominates. That is what the book is. A confession hiding in hypotheticals, truth wrapped in plausible deniability. Jack Unterweger, der Sadist, translated as the sadist. A convicted murderer wrote literary fiction in prison, became a celebrated author, was released as a reformed man, and then immediately started killing again. His prison novel later became evidence at his second trial. The word "celebrated" takes on a dark edge here. Der Sadist by Jack Unterweger is an Austrian case study in how charisma, talent, and manipulation can fool an entire literary establishment with deadly consequences. Unterweger murdered a woman in 1974. In prison, he wrote poetry, plays, and a semi-autobiographical novel. Critics called it brilliant. Intellectuals championed his rehabilitation. He became a media darling, and he was released in 1990. By 1992, he had murdered at least 9 more women. Der Sadist follows a protagonist eerily similar to Unterweger, a young man drawn to violence, struggling with urges, and committing murder. The book frames those actions as tragedy, as sickness, and as something the protagonist fights against. The tone is literary, philosophical, and introspective. Reading it now, after knowing what Unterweger did after his release, the book transforms. Every moment of introspection reads as rehearsal. Every expression of remorse reads as performance. The protagonist's inner torment becomes a manipulation tactic. The novel was not rehabilitation therapy, it was Unterweger workshopping his public persona. After his release, he became a journalist, covered crime stories, and interviewed prostitutes for research. Then bodies started appearing. The same modus operandi as his first murder, strangulation with the victim's own bras. Police suspected him. He fled to the United States, killed in Los Angeles, returned to Austria, was arrested, convicted, and hanged himself in prison. This is not about art redeeming criminals. It is about how predators use whatever tools work, violence, charm, and literary talent, and how we project redemption onto them because we want to believe people change. Der Sadist is proof that you can write beautifully about violence and still plan to commit it. Unterweger played the role of a reformed killer so well that society gave him access to more victims. Dennis Rader, known as BTK, Letters and Writings. For 17 years he murdered, then vanished. For 14 years he stayed silent, and then his ego made him write letters to police, and that is what caught him. Dennis Rader's communications included letters to police and to the media, and a journal found after his arrest. Those documents have been published in various collections documenting the BTK killer's narcissism. BTK stands for Bind, Torture, Kill. Rader murdered 10 people in Wichita from 1974 to 1991. Then he went silent. He resurfaced in 2004 with letters to the media. He wanted credit, attention, fame. Those letters led to his arrest in 2005. Rader's writings read like performance art from a man who killed for attention. Early letters to police in the 1970s were openly taunting. He demanded recognition and suggested names for himself, asking how about calling him BTK. He gave details only the killer would know, and included crime scene sketches. He wanted to be important. Then came decades of silence. During that time, he kept a secret journal with drawings of victims, fantasies, and poems about murder structured like love sonnets. He called victims projects, and he logged them like accounting entries. Church president by day, meticulous killer poet by night. In 2004, Rader contacted the media again. He sent packages with dolls posed like victims, and computer disks with deleted files he thought were untraceable. He asked if a floppy disk could be traced. Police initially said no. He sent one anyway. They traced it, and he was arrested within weeks. His writings reveal an addiction to recognition. The murders were not enough. He needed the world to know he did them. He needed to control the narrative, to name himself, to achieve notoriety. This is not about the murders themselves. It is about how narcissism can become a compulsion stronger than self-preservation. Rader stayed free for 30 years, and then he threw it away because being unknown was worse than prison. BTK's letters prove a brutal truth about certain killers. They do not just want to take lives, they want applause for it. And that ego is always the weakness. Peter Kürten, will to power. The Dusseldorf vampire terrorized Germany in 1929. He drank his victim's blood and then tried to philosophically justify it using Nietzsche before his execution. Because apparently serial killers think they're intellectuals too. Peter Kürten's confessions and writings, compiled as Will to Power, reference Nietzsche and document one of Germany's most notorious killers attempting to frame sadism as philosophy. This collection reads like a performance of confession, more than a coherent argument. Kürten murdered at least 9 people and attempted to murder 7 more in Dusseldorf between 1929 and 1930. Men, women, and children were strangled, stabbed, and bludgeoned. He drank blood from wounds. He confessed to psychiatrist Carl Berg, who published detailed accounts. Kürten tried to frame his crimes as expressions of will, power, and superiority. His writings show a man desperate to be taken seriously. He describes a childhood fascination with violence, drowning playmates and torturing animals, not as warning signs but as an awakening to his true nature. He presents sadism as honesty and conventional morality as weakness. The murders escalate from non-fatal attempts to killings. He describes arousal from violence, orgasms during stabbings, and drinking blood from victims' necks and temples. He writes about these acts clinically, as if documenting a biological function rather than a crime. Those philosophical justifications ring hollow. Kürten references Nietzsche and talks about Übermensch concepts, framing murder as transcending slave morality. Nietzsche never advocated violence. Kürten latched on to misunderstood philosophy to dress up sadism and claim intellectual cover. After his arrest, he was almost eager to confess. He wanted his story told and hoped for fame. Instead, he was executed by guillotine in 1931. His final question to the psychiatrist was, "After my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear the sound of my own blood gushing from my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures." This is not about philosophy. It is about how intelligent people can twist ideas to justify anything, and how genuine intellect and absolute monstrosity can coexist in the same mind. Kürten wanted to be remembered as a thinker who transcended morality. Instead, he is remembered correctly, as a killer who read Nietzsche and learned nothing.